the standpoint of starting with that kind of beginner, some person that's just kind of let themselves slide and all of a sudden has had, a moment of realization and then comes to the process of training versus someone that has been training, religiously throughout their life and is now hitting their 40s and 50s. The former is probably the easier situation because they are kind of starting out anew, so the balance between stimulus and recovery is much less critical. So you're going to have, for that person, those early sweet gains, so that if you apply the correct concepts in terms of some reasonable form of intense training that's relatively brief, that allows for enough recovery, and if they eat anywhere in the realm of an improved diet compared to what they had been doing, I think most people in that age bracket are going to be shocked at how quickly and how well things start to turn around for them. But it really has to be appropriate exercise, and it really has to be some form of a whole food diet. And if you put those two things together, I think most people 40 and above that are embarking upon this process are going to be shocked at how well it works. As opposed to someone that's been training for a long time that probably has applied a paradigm that worked well in their 20s that all of a sudden is not working so well.
Well, that's an interesting perspective as well. Now you've mentioned that sort of.
Yeah, it's a little bit more problematic for that person because, there's this whole there's this whole problem of wanting to deny where you are in this process and the realities of it. But the way I try to explain it to that person, and this will also become an issue for the new client and the new trainee that makes some progress up to a certain point. Once you get to that point where it's no longer coming easily, then the way I try to explain it to people is that, look, now we're treating you like I would treat an elite level athlete, a world-class athlete is going to have the same problem as a person in their 40s that are bumping up against the limits of their recovery and their lifestyle and things like that. Because now what happens is, used to when you were 20, you had the hormonal environment and the lack of life stressors that allowed you to be relatively sloppy and still get good results. But now you have all the life stressors of being a person with a real job, with real responsibility, with real financial burdens, with real children, with real marriage issues, all of those stressors built into a hormonal and aging environment that's less optimal. So now you're like a world-class athlete in that now you have to be a little bit more meticulous because you're operating on much thinner margins. So you just have to be really disciplined in applying the stimulus in the most effective way where you're going to get the most bang for your buck with the least volume that you can inflict upon yourself, and marry that to being very meticulous about the recovery side of the equation, paying attention to, am I hydrating well? Am I getting 3 liters of water for 24 hours? Am I, having good sleep hygiene? Am I having good stress management practices? Because only in the context, you can make the stimulus as perfect as you want to, but if you're not really managing the recovery side of the equation in an optimal fashion, then you're just going to be, running against that brick wall over and over again. So that's where things really get important to invoke, not the kind of discipline that takes control of your life, but the kind of discipline where you can't just not pay attention and expect things to work out.
I imagine that would also include at some point then the discipline not to exercise.
Correct. And, that is, sometimes that's hard to regulate because when things are not responding, our natural inclination is to double down on the workout side of the equation. When in fact, what may be happening is that we're just not responding like we want to because we have simply done too much or not allowed quite enough recovery time. And, and I'm guilty of this even now, knowing everything that I know, because the recovery side of my life is so jumbled up with my job and the lifestyle that it entails that, many times I know I'm doing workouts where I'm not appropriately recovered, but it's, the only time it's going to fit into the schedule, so I do it anyway, and then I pay the price, But yeah, sometimes that's the hardest thing to recognize is that, I can't hammer on this side of the equation until I pay attention to that other side.
So what you've effectively been talking about then is a reduced recovery rate in many ways.
Correct. And it's not, and this is the hard thing is you can't let, the old saying, your ego is not your amigo. You can't let your ego get in the way because, it's like, oh, it's just admitting that I'm getting older and I'm not going to do that kind of. It's not just that you're getting older, okay? Because I can tell you, I was in my late 20s when I was in med school and residency. And the impact of, 120-hour work week was massive. And my experience of working out then was much worse than my experience working out now at age 56.
Is that because of the knowledge that you have?
You're not necessarily that you're getting older. It's that getting older entails stressors and responsibilities that you just didn't have when you were younger, and throw in the fact, yeah, you are getting older and the hormonal environment may be less than optimal, but really compared to the stress and lifestyle issues, the fact that you're getting older is not a big part of that equation that you're having to account for. So don't let your ego get in the way of it, thinking that if I'm paying attention to this, then I'm just admitting that I'm older and this is the problem. No, that's not the case at all. It's a matter, it's the whole Spinoza, nature to be commanded must be obeyed. And my favorite saying is, the secret to being superhuman is to realize you are only human. So you've got to allow for the kind of rest and stress modulation that makes the recovery side of your equation and your lifestyle feel more like it was when you were a carefree 20-year-old.